Don't hum. That's weird. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm always humming.
I know. Oh, wait, we started. Sorry. Hi.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Fine. It's not, the world does not run on East Coast time.
Well, I'm just saying for me, it's afternoon. For you, it's morning.
That's true.
So, you know.
That's true. That's true. Okay, fine. Fine. We're going to do an interesting episode. We've never done this before. Just you and I talking about a topic. We kicked my father out of the conversation, basically because we want to have a chance to say stuff. And I'm just kidding.
Basically.
I mean, kidding, not kidding. And I'm excited because you read something that I have no idea about. So hopefully you're going to teach me about it today. Did I set that up correctly?
You set it up correctly. We'll see how it goes. People might leave this call thinking that all sorts of crazy things. So, you know, we'll see how it goes.
Well, yeah, let's see.
So I will preface this whole thing by saying that don't believe anything I say. If you quote me in conversation later on and it's wrong, you have no one to blame but yourself. So that's
so you're saying fact check you. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Fact check me, please.
Fine.
Please fact check me.
It's interesting you're saying that because, you know, I taught high school Jewish history for 12 years and there were many times where I said things and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, wait, is that true? Like, I couldn't remember precisely if it was correct. But like in high school, you don't have to worry about it because it's not like the students know either way.
Or are paying attention.
But I do remember, or we're paying exactly. But I definitely do remember a few times where I was like, wait, is that correct? Like, was the Spanish Inquisition in 1291 or 1492 or in 1500? I'm like, so yeah, it's even the people who claim to be experts don't always know everything.
Well, especially now that I'm particularly sensitive to this topic, given what's happened with all the faux experts in the world now.
I know.
So it's a bigger concern of mine. But again, I have the preface. I'm not a historian.
Yes,
I barely even read English.
That is not true.
So
that is not true. That's you fishing for a compliment. That's you wanting me to say that's not true. You read so much. You're the most well-read person I know.
That's crazy.
Etc.
That
is true.
That says more about you than it says about me, honestly.
No. No, people who listen to this podcast often say to me, they can't believe how much you read. So I think it's well established.
That's a sad commentary in the world.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Exactly. Okay. So what are we talking about today?
All right. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about something called the Harrison Report. Have you ever heard of the Harrison Report?
Only from you.
Okay.
I've never heard of it.
Okay.
Which is embarrassing for me since I taught the subject, but go ahead.
So I will say as a general rule, I try to read original sources as much as possible. I can't always, but I try to read the original sources no matter how laborious and boring it might be to read them. But I try to do that. So I've heard about this thing called the Harrison Report. And so long story short, and I'll give a bunch of background to this, but the summary of the Harrison Report is the Allies defeated the Nazis in May of 1945. And after the war, there were a bunch of displaced persons or DPs, right?
Correct.
And they had to go somewhere. So these were like forced laborers or POWs or refugees, but a lot of them obviously were concentration camp survivors.
Right.
And so starting in around June of 45, so maybe like a month, 6 weeks later, Truman, President Truman at the time, in case you didn't know, Harry Truman was president at the time. Truman started to get reports of that the Jews in particular were being mistreated. And so he was getting reports from groups like the American Jewish Committee and the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, or the Joint as it was called, and the World Jewish Congress. And he was getting reports about how Jews were being held together with Nazis or former Nazis in these camps that they were being held in, that the conditions were abysmal, and that they were still being held behind barbed wire, and there was no support. They were just kind of being held in place as they were before the war ended. And so what happened is Truman wanted to get a report on what was actually happening. So he reaches out to this guy, Earl Harrison, who Harrison was the commissioner of the Immigration and Naturalization Service under Truman for a few years, and he oversaw immigration policy during World War II, which is not known for being one of the highlights in the history of American history,
and definitely not Jewish friendly. Yeah,
no, for sure. Yes, right. But Harrison he did push for maximum immigration that was within the bounds of the law.
Oh, okay.
And so he was a lawyer. He graduated from Penn Law School, and he left the INS group during this time period, or a little before this time period, and he was going to become the dean of the Penn Law School. And so he had to kind of had this interim period where he wasn't in the government and he hadn't taken on this post yet at Penn. So he said, Truman tapped him on the shoulder, and because of his background, because he was available, he said, would you go off and just go to Europe, see what's happening? And so we did. So, he was available to do this work. And so he sent him off. And, one of the big things about Harrison was that he wasn't Jewish, but he did have a reputation to be for integrity. Okay. And so Truman thought that he would give him a fair report of what was happening.
Right.
And so he was told to go off. Now, obviously, it should go without saying, Harrison was sent to the U.S. zone. Right.
Right.
He couldn't go to places like Poland because that was the Russian zone. And so he could go to Germany, parts of Germany and Austria.
Uh-huh.
And so part of this is to say, this is only the American Jews that he was doing a report on.
That's interesting.
He did not have access to the
Jews
Russian
under American
parts.
Control, basically.
Right. Of the territories that were under American control.
Right. Okay.
Yep. So it was only parts of Germany and Austria.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so he went and he did this report. And in, I believe it was August of 45, he sent his final report to Truman. And I'll just give us a quick quote from the summary section. And he writes, as my report shows, they, the Jews, are in need of attention and help. Up to this point, they've been liberated, quote unquote, in a more military sense than actually. For reasons explained in the report, their particular problems to this time have not been given attention to any appreciable extent. Consequently, they feel, who are in so many ways the first and worst victims of the Nazis, are being neglected by their liberators. And so he starts to go on and explain what the conditions were for the Jews who are being held in these camps. And so, number one is they were, many of them were still being held in the camps. They had not been moved. They were still
in the concentration camps.
In the concentration camps,
right?
Yeah, like in Bergen-Belsen, right, was one of them. And so it was really no work had been done on the camps. So they were still being kept in completely unsanitary conditions. They had nothing to do. And they were just sitting there.
Sleeping in the same beds or barracks that they had been before. Right.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So they were just there. They were wearing the same striped pajamas that we probably all know about from the pictures that we've seen. But some of them were actually wearing Nazi uniforms.
Oh my God.
Because they
took off of the Nazis.
Because they were warmer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. And he writes here, the internees feel particularly bitter about the state of their clothing when they see how well the German population is still dressed. The German population today is still the best dressed population in all of Europe.
Oh my gosh.
And so it's another point I think that's important to be made here is that a lot of these camps were in rural areas,
Right.
but the camps were within eye line of towns.
Right.
So these Jews were sitting in these camps. They could see German civilians just going about their day, wearing the clothes, living in their houses still. And so you can imagine what that must be like. I mean, talk about just an absolute kick in the teeth that the same people who
committed the atrocities
were just went back to their lives.
Right.
And this is, a month or two later. This is not like years later. They're just instantly like that back to their lives.
It's kind of infuriating to think about, actually.
It really totally is. Totally is.
One thing I want to say, though, my grandmother was liberated from Bergen-Belsen, actually. You mentioned Bergen-Belsen, but she was extremely sick, like deadly. She almost died at the end of the war. So her and a bunch of other women were transported from Bergen-Belsen and sent to a hospital in Sweden. So I guess maybe the Americans took out the most sick patients or whatever, prisoners, and sent them off. And so the ones who were left were like the ones who were more able-bodied.
When was she transferred? Whatever. Do you know when?
Immediately.
Was it because
as soon as they were liberated? Because she was almost dead.
Okay. Because the report says that a lot of people who were in desperate need of medical attention were still there and had not been moved.
Yeah, she was moved, I think, right away.
Okay.
I don't know. I wish I knew the date. I mean, I could probably find it because there is good. They have good records of that actually at the Holocaust Museum in DC. But I can look it up, but I'm not sure. But I think she was moved very, very soon after the liberation, if not immediately. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. But yeah, maybe the most desperate cases were.
Yeah, that's
moved.
What I'm thinking. Right.
Or maybe we'll talk about what was done after the fact here. But there Eisenhower was very responsive to this report.
Right. He was.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So but coming back to the report, and this one section is incredibly depressing. He writes
just the way we like it.
Yeah. He writes, beyond knowing that they are no longer in danger of the gas chambers, torture, and other forms of violent death, they see there is little change. The morale of those who are either stateless or do not wish to return to their countries of nationality is very low. They have witnessed great activity and efficiency in returning people to their homes, but they hear or see nothing in the way of plans for them, and consequently wonder and frequently ask what liberation even means. The situation is considerably accentuated where, as in so many cases, they're able to look from their crowded and bare quarters and see the German civilian population, particularly in the rural areas, to all appearances living normal lives in their own homes.
Wow. It's just so sad. That is so incredibly sad.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is that, the Jewish prisoners had nowhere to go, and the Americans probably didn't know what to do with them. And if you were another kind of prisoner, if you were a Polish prisoner or a German prisoner, you could go home. But where were the Jews going? It's.
Well, that's one of the recommendations Harrison makes in his report is the fact that at this point, Jews weren't being categorized as Jews; they were being categorized as their nationalities.
Oh,
so
interesting.
There were no Jews; it was Poles and Romanians and etc. And one of the things that Harrison writes in his report for remedies is to categorize Jews as Jews because they were treated obviously very differently and more harshly than people of other nationalities.
Right.
And so he said there need to be different considerations for them. And of course, we know later on all the pogroms that happened after the fact, right? The Jews that did go back to their homes in places like Poland, like there were pogroms after they got back.
They were killed. Many Jews were killed.
It is the craziest thing to imagine that after the fact, there are pogroms when they get back home.
That's
I mean,
terrible.
It's incomprehensible.
But also, I mean, one of the things that was happening for the Jews is, I mean, they were trying to figure out if their families were alive. I mean, that was the biggest part. Does it talk about that at all? Trying to reunite families? Okay.
Yes.
What does it say?
Yes. Yeah, it does. He wrote about the fact that that the Jews, the ones who wanted to return to their homes, predominantly wanted to return to their homes just to try to find their families.
Right. Okay. Not to settle there.
Right.
Yeah.
But that most of them, there had been no attempt to try to reunite families outside of like the Joint and a couple of chaplains who are rabbis in the army had done some work around that. But I mean, there's camps all over the place, and there's thousands of Jews, and there really been no particular effort trying to see who was in what camp and make connections and
wow.
So there really wasn't.
It's so hard to imagine. Yeah.
It's crazy. But then also at the end of the report, Harrison writes about where they want to go. Okay. And if you have listened to like Haviv Redigor's stuff, he's talked about this before, about where they want to go. And the vast majority, the overwhelming majority, wants to go to Palestine.
Right. It's interesting because people don't understand how Zionism did not start in 1948. I mean, this is the biggest case for Zionism, by the way. They had nowhere to go. They had nowhere to go. They wanted to go back to the Jewish country. I mean, it's... Yep. Why are we doing this topic? It's so depressing.
Yeah, it is. It is depressing. And I will say, it actually, it kind of gets worse, actually.
Oh, excellent. Great.
So
let's keep going.
So enjoy it. It gets better in some regards. It gets worse in other regards.
Okay.
But yeah, so he basically wrote that even prior to the Holocaust, the Jews had been persecuted in their home countries for so long that they said the only place really they can go is Palestine. And so that's where they want to go. And so, at this point, so a couple things. So we should talk about, before we get to the Palestine thing, just really quickly, talk about U.S. immigration law.
Okay.
And then
what was the United States letting
come back?
Right. Okay.
So in 1924, the U.S. passed something called the Johnson-Reed Act, which severely limited immigration from specific parts of Europe, mainly Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
For probably somewhat obvious reasons.
Right.
And it favored immigrants from other parts of Europe. But even for the other parts of Europe, there were pretty strict visa requirements. Essentially, you had to, when you came over, you had to make sure, prove you would not be a ward of the state. So you had to have family here, or you had to have the financial means to support yourself. And, it's needless to say, the Jews and the shtetls did not qualify for many of these things.
Well, even during the Holocaust itself, I mean, the U.S. didn't take in. I mean, there's famous case of the St. Louis and many other cases where people tried to, get in. Jews tried to come here and run away from Europe, and they were denied entry. So,
and so I was going to bring up the St. Louis. So for those of you who don't know, in 1939, there was a ship called the SS St. Louis that brought over somewhere around 900 or 1,000 Jewish refugees, and the U.S. denied them entry, and they were sent back to Europe. And we think somewhere around 250 of them died in the Holocaust.
Right.
Later, the U.S. passed something called the Displaced Persons Act of 1948.
Oh.
But even in those instances, it was not really, it was weighted towards people who are not Jews. primarily.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they wanted specifically agricultural workers.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of the Jews were not agricultural workers. But in that case, Truman actually called them out and said this was really amoral and despicable. And so after Truman said that, they loosened up the restrictions to allow more Jewish refugees in.
It's such an interesting idea. I mean, because being a refugee and coming here as a Jew, after World War II, I mean, we have so much gratitude for this country that allowed in whoever it did allow in, which, by the way, was not many. Most Holocaust survivors did not come here. My grandparents are a good example where they ended up in Canada because Canada opened up more than the US. Many ended up in Argentina, obviously in Palestine, Israel, all over Europe. But it makes me think about refugees today. And it's really hard, because I want to have that big open heart of allowing in every refugee that needs a place to go based on, what we've experienced in our history. And then we get stuck in these sort of quagmires in a way with populations that are not good for the United States, but I don't know what that means even, because I'm sure there were people saying that about the Jews. So it's a really tough position.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm saying for the United States to be in, where everybody wants to come here. That's
for sure.
That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Yeah,
just for sure. To put a finer point on that. It's a tough position.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Now I think we'll come to the part of the discussion where it is really inexcusable, and that is the British role in this. So I'm going to quote Harrison again. Okay. This is a long section, but I think it's really important. So he writes, with respect to those who do not, for good reason, wish to return to their homes, prompt planning should likewise be undertaken. In this connection, the issue of Palestine must be faced. Now that such large numbers are no longer involved, and if there's any genuine sympathy for what these survivors have endured, some reasonable extension or modification of the British White Paper of 1939 ought to be possible without too serious repercussions. For some of the European Jews, there is no acceptable or even decent solution for their future other than Palestine. This is said on a purely humanitarian basis, with no reference to ideological or political considerations so far as Palestine is concerned. It is my understanding, based upon reliable information, that certificates for immigration to Palestine will be practically exhausted by the end of the current month, which is August 1945.
Right.
What is the future to be? And then he finishes by saying, to anyone who has visited the concentration camps and who has talked with the despairing survivors, it is nothing short of calamitous to contemplate the gates of Palestine should soon be closed.
Wow. So he's calling out the British for grossly limiting the number of Jews that they were allowing into Palestine at the time. Mm-hmm. He's calling them out. That's okay. I mean, good for him.
Yeah. And so, this is a whole other discussion. But for everyone, this was the White Paper of 1939 limited Jewish immigration to, I think it was like 5,000 a year for over 5 years. So it was a pittance. It was nothing.
Isn't it interesting how the British?
It was 75,000 over 5 years.
Oh, okay. That's not much at all. No, 75,000 over 5 years is nothing.
Or 5 years. Yeah.
At once, the British were the saviors and the jailers at the same time, because they really are, partially responsible, not partially, I think greatly responsible for the Jews surviving World War II, number one. And then they're also responsible for tremendous suffering by closing off Palestine to so many Jews. I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, it's just frustrating. Mm-hmm. And history would be so different today if things would have been done differently in 1945.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And he also, the other thing he writes about in the report is the fact that a lot of the German people had no guilt about the war.
Yeah.
And and that it was just incomprehensible that these Germans were living their lives in their houses with their clothes and their food. And we actually, I skipped over the food part. I should talk about the food part in the camps. That they had, he said that the food that the Jews were getting in the camps was almost inedible. It was basically coffee and moldy bread.
Wow.
And so he's looking at the Germans, and the Jews are looking at the Germans, but Harrison's looking at the Germans and saying, these people lost the war. They are under a military dictatorship. And yet they have all their clothes, all their food. They're living back in the places where they came from. And he basically said, I understand why they have no guilt and why they don't feel like they lost the war, because their lives went back to normal.
Right.
So it's like, how wrong could we have been if we're just living the lives we led before the war? And haven't felt the consequences of it.
What should happen? I mean, I don't know if you have an answer to this, but like, what should happen to a regular German civilian who was living in a rural part of Germany, or even in the urban centers? I mean, what should happen to someone like that after World War II? I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I'm already sort of beyond my depths in talking about this whole topic, so I definitely don't want to get into to military law. But I will say, though, I mean, if you started a war and you lose the war, and then you're under a military dictatorship, it seems like the conquering army would have the right to requisition, at the very least, clothing and food and housing from people, and house their victims. I mean, that seems like it is a completely reasonable and justified response. Yeah. I mean, my question was more like morally, what should happen? But yeah, I know. I think you're right. I mean, your answer is good because it's true. I mean, there are practical, physical ways that people can be punished. But morally, I wonder, like, what should happen to a place like Germany? I mean, when the Assyrians conquered lands, I mean, not to compare us to the Assyrians, but, they basically did mass expulsion, and everybody got sort of blended into wherever they were expelled to. And it was sort of the end of that place, and there's a part of me, I mean, I know this is going to sound harsh, but, that I wouldn't have felt bad for that to happen to the Germans, obviously not to kill them, but, just dispersion and, done with German society. But, people will say, well, they were civilians and they didn't have anything to do with it and but I'm not so comfortable with that answer. I mean, there has to be a bigger price to pay for your government doing really terrible things, which the Germans are responsible for.
Yeah. And, it's, there were a lot of extreme measures taken after World War II. I mean, after World War II, I mean, there were millions of people who were forcefully relocated.
Right.
Germans who had moved to the Sudetenlands and other places were moved. That was after World War II, was the creation of Pakistan, so to separate the Hindus and the Muslims. It was basically the creation of most of the Baltic states. Soon afterwards, it was the creation of that's right. Well, Middle East was more after World War I.
No, but I'm saying, like, after World War II, when England, completely left.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you're right.
It was a creation of Cyprus. I mean, it was, I mean, so there were all sorts of people who were against their will were moved.
Right.
And so that's not out of the realm of, is it moral? I don't know. It's probably we can ask your dad next time we record with him what he thinks about that.
Do you think the Eastern Germans suffered more than, I mean, I think I feel like the East Germans got punished in a way that the West Germans did not. The West Germans got a good life. I mean, normal, Western democracy and tons of American aid and, rebuilt their country. And I'm whatever I feel about that. I mean, but the East Germans actually probably got the brunt of the punishment.
Oh yeah. I mean, they went from being, controlled by the Nazis to being controlled by the communists.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And it was terrible there.
They got the worst end of the stick there for sure.
That's true.
For sure.
That's
for
true.
sure.
Did you read anything when you were doing the research on this, did you come across anything about the Jewish response to being in these refugee camps? Because I remember reading, I should have looked this up before we talked, but I do remember reading once that the highest rate of the highest birth rate and marriage rate in the world in like 1947 was Jews in DP camps. Because so many Jews were getting married and having babies. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yes. It was so, because that was that was basically the response for most Jews was like, okay, I don't know where my family is, or, I have a few survivors left. I have to continue my life. And many, many Jews got married and got pregnant immediately, even while in the DP camps. And I grew up with, many of my teachers and my friends' fathers were born in DP camps, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a very common occurrence.
Yeah, I read, what was the book? I read something about, it was recommended in a commentary maybe a few months ago. It was about a guy and his brother who were born in DP camps and came over to New York, and what that was like to make that change. But yeah, that's interesting. I did not know that. I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole this morning trying to figure out my grandfather, because I know where my grandmother ended up in Sweden, and she actually did get married right after the war, and she did have my aunt immediately after the war. She was like my grandmother who survived Auschwitz and the Bergen-Belsen, and like to think that she was even in a frame of mind of like getting married is astonishing on its own. But the fact that so many people decided to do that. My grandfather, I know, was in a DP camp in Germany also. The only way I know that is because we have one card that he brought over with him that said, it was like an ID card from the DP camp. And it said that he was the Rosh Yeshiva, which is the head of the yeshiva of the DP camp. It says his name and there's a picture of him. And he ended up going, obviously, from there to Montreal, where, he met my grandmother, and that's where they got married. But I couldn't find anything about him online. I tried to search databases of DP camps. I tried to search database of survivors. And it's like some of these people are ghosts. Like they just don't exist. And I think about like my grandfather had a daughter who was killed in the war and his wife was killed. There's no evidence of them. We know they existed. We have a picture of them, and there is no documented evidence of these people's lives. And I just, that was this morning when I was going through that kind of, looking through, I've done this search a million times, but I tried again this morning because I thought I would use ChatGPT to help me. But still nothing. And it's just, I don't know, that's a tragedy unto itself in a way, just absolutely.
People who are just gone,
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you do think about how many people just like whole families.
Yeah.
Just disappeared. Like probably never existed.
Right. If my grandfather, just one person, would not have survived, his entire family would be gone. None of his siblings survived. None of his aunts or uncles, not his parents, his kid, his wife, like they would all be gone, but one survivor. And so I'm named after his mother. His mother was ChayaLeah. His father was Avraham, which is my father's name. We at least like live on for them, but there's no evidence of them. Yeah. There's almost just no evidence that they ever existed except for me, right? Like my existence, but
it's so. I'm just thinking about what you said about the birth rates in the DP camps. It's so interesting. What's the psychology of somebody after going through that would make you want to, bring new life into the world?
I think it's just our deep, it's a Jewish value that like we survive, and we know just not survive, we thrive and we continue on, and we have an obligation to, continue building our families. And look, I'm sure there are plenty of people who chose not to. There's a very famous story about Elie Wiesel and the Rabbi about this, where Elie Wiesel didn't want to have kids, I think, after the Holocaust. Don't quote me on this because I can't remember all the details of the story, but I know for a fact that, I mean, look it up because, or we'll link it actually.
Yeah.
But I think the Rebbe wrote him a long, or it was either in a conversation they had or in a letter where the Rebbe basically said, by not having kids, you're letting the Nazis win. And you only can defeat the Nazis by having a child. And Elie Wiesel went on to have one son, Elisha, and he's, a very active person now on social media, and he's very pro-Israel. And, the point is, doesn't matter, but the point is that the Rebbe said, you let them win over and over again when you give up. And I think that's just a value that Jews have internalized for generations, that we don't let them do that to us. Like we are going to live on our own terms. And even if it means that, we're going to get married in a DP camp with no family and, no wedding dress, but we're going to have a little wedding and going to have children. I mean, it's a beautiful idea. And I do remember you can find pictures of women. I'm just remembering now, but women in the DP camps, like with strollers and babies, and just to think about the juxtaposition of where they were, 3 years prior to that, and to where they were then it's an astonishing, and I feel like embarrassed almost, like that kind of resiliency. Like I wake up and complain on a normal day about the dumbest crap. And then to think about that kind of resiliency, it's kind of shameful for me, but
for everybody.
Yeah.
For everybody.
There should be a lesson for us. I don't want to be shamed. I want to feel inspired.
For sure. Yes, yeah. For sure. So after this, Harrison sends the report to Truman, and Truman is very upset, and he writes a letter to Eisenhower, and he writes, I know you will agree with me that we have particular responsibility towards these victims of persecution and tyranny who are in our zone. We must make clear to the German people that we thoroughly abhor the Nazi policies of hatred and persecution. We have no better opportunity to demonstrate this than by the manner in which we ourselves actually treat the survivors remaining in Germany. Yeah. So then Eisenhower
got it at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So then Eisenhower gets the letter, and he takes it seriously, and he gives orders to people to go out and examine the camps and figure out ways that they could be improved. And so a lot of at that point, a lot of the Jews are moved out of the camp, a lot of times in hotels or in former Wehrmacht barracks or in requisitioned buildings.
That's good.
They're given more food, better medical care, better clothing. And so, so it's, he takes it seriously, and he tries to, for the situation as it was, for this hopefully temporary situation, he tries to fix it. So now that will come to the UK. And after this, after he gets the report, Truman publicly calls out Clement Attlee, who's the PM of the UK at the time, and says that you need to admit 100,000 Jewish refugees now. And sure enough, the British say, no, we're not going to do that. Right. And one thing I was going to say earlier, I think that's important for people to realize is we should do a separate episode on this. We should see if we can get maybe Oren Kessler to come on or something and talk about this. Yes. But there was essentially, long story short, is that over the few decades when the Jewish migration to Palestine had been significant, you had the things like the Nebi Musa riots and the Arab revolts, and you had different occurrences that happened where the Arabs in Palestine fought back against the British to try to prevent Jewish immigration. And essentially, the UK was spineless, didn't want to deal with it, and said, fine. So that's where the white paper came from to limit Jewish immigration. And so then that is a very consolidated history of what happened,
No,
but that's
right. Good.
the gist of it.
Yeah.
And so Truman goes to Clement Attlee and says, you need to admit 100,000 Jewish refugees. Attlee says, no, we're not going to do that because they're concerned about the Arab response, because Britain still has the mandate and they still have soldiers there. And the UK had interests. They, especially they had oil interests with the Arab states.
Right.
And so Attlee says, what does any good bureaucrat say when they are asked to do something they don't want to do? They form a commission.
Yeah. Exactly.
So they formed the Anglo-American Committee of Inquiry to study the refugee crisis and the Palestinian question. And so this, they basically do more or less the same thing that Harrison does. They go around to the camps and they talk to the people who are in the camps. And I didn't get a chance to read their report. I'll read that maybe this weekend. But so the commission comes back, and what do they say? We need to admit 100,000 Jews to Palestine immediately.
Oh, interesting.
And England says, well, that's too bad, because that's not going to happen.
Oh my God. And
they refuse. They don't.
Wow.
And that's where you have, the growth of what was called Aliyah Bet, which was the human smuggling operation to get Jews into Palestine. And that was, most famously, the movie Exodus is one of those Aliyah Bet operations. But long story short is the British don't allow the Jews in and keep the restrictions in place. And that's basically what happens. And then that's when you start to have, the Irgun and the Lehi, and they had existed before this, but after this, they really stepped up their activities to fight the British in Palestine, to try to, and it was an obvious step to take, because you see that violence works.
Right.
So, okay, if that's what's going to get you to change your mind because you changed it once, well, we'll get you to change it back.
Yeah.
And so
it's interesting. When I was on my little adventure coming out of Israel during the war, a few weeks ago,
your own Aliyah Bet,
my own reverse. We called it reverse Aliyah.
Reverse, yes.
It was a reverse, and literally it was reverse because, and I kept talking about it the whole time with my students, because we went from Israel to Cyprus to Germany. And that's exactly the path that Jews were trying to get to.
God, I didn't even think of that.
From Germany, many of them ended up in Cyprus, and they were stuck in Cyprus sometimes up to 2 or 3 years until they were able to get to Palestine. Yeah. And so here we were doing the exact opposite. And it just, I don't know, like it was such a weird reality and moment for me to experience that. Also, I want to just tell you, I just quickly looked, not that I wasn't listening to every word you said, I was, but I also quickly looked up, in the American zone alone, 50,000 Jewish babies were born between 1946 and 1950. So it's a lot of babies just in the American zone. Yeah. That's
crazy.
The Jews the Jews had a job to do, which was to rebuild, and they got right to it. And so I give them a lot of credit,
No time like the present.
I know.
But
no, that's so interesting. I mean, the Harris. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I was going to change topics. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say. So the Harrison report, after it came out, and Truman took it seriously, and then was Eisenhower running the show on the ground in Europe at the time after World War II ended?
Yeah.
So he controlled, because I do remember very much my grandmother always saying that, and this is just anecdotal. So, this isn't like an academic opinion. It's my grandmother's opinion, but I do remember her saying that the people who were liberated by the Americans and who ended up in the American zones were much better off than anyone else. Obviously the Russians were the worst. I mean, if you got liberated by the Russians, was terrible probably. And the British were cold and, weren't exactly the most, even though we appreciate everything they did, but still, but the Americans, plus there were many Jews who served in the American army. And so that's another story that's interesting, which we've talked to, Shalom Lamb about, the people who died, but we didn't really talk about the fact that many of these American soldiers were Jewish who liberated the camps. So when they came there and saw the Jews, the way they were being treated and what had happened, I mean, they were very involved in trying to improve their conditions, and went home and really told the story back here in America to the Jewish community.
There were a lot of German Jews who, not a lot, but there were contingents of German Jews who served, and they served as interpreters and sometimes interrogators of Nazis.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
But so so I figured I read this and I thought it was interesting.
Really interesting. Yeah. Go ahead.
The thing I was going to mention is that on Netflix a few years ago there was a series put out called Five Came Home, Five Came Back. I forget. I think it was Five Came Back. And it was about how the U.S. government got a bunch of the really famous Hollywood directors at the time to make films after the war, to just sort of document what happened. And if you go and watch that, the first video I think on there is actually raw footage of the camps liberated in the American zone.
Right. It's called Five Came Back, by the way, and it's on Netflix,
Five Came Back. And so it's a really interesting series, but the first episode is raw footage of video from the camps after they've been liberated. Like within some of this video, I think it was taken like days later. And it's shocking.
Not to get even more depressing than we are already about this topic, but just to add another layer to it is, to see how the Holocaust is being weaponized against us now, and the words and the language and the imagery of the Holocaust to be turned against the Jewish people and the Jewish state. It just, when I hear you talk about this report and what happened, it just reminds me how obscene it is. It's obscene for the world to stand by and allow this to happen, and for the UN to participate, and the EU and France and Canada. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say other than it's absolute anti-Semitism, because this is this happened to us not that long ago, and now they turn it on us. It's disgusting.
It really is sort of the, I think I blame a lot of this on social media. I think social media is to blame for most of this, but it's also just people have no backbones anymore. Yeah. And it's just, what's happening in Gaza is very sad. And, I'm sure whatever the truth of the situation is, I'm sure life in Gaza is not pleasant at the moment. And that's an understatement. I'm sure it's awful.
Right.
But that said, you have to keep things in context of why things happen. And it's this mindset of, whatever the immediate thing that makes me feel bad, I'm going to react to that thing.
Yeah.
And
that's social media. You're right.
And I hate to say it, but the only person with any backbone this entire situation is Donald Trump. It's true. And, I'm sure a lot of people I'm sure a segment of our listeners will not like hearing that, but
right. But he's clear about this topic, this specific topic. Yeah.
For a guy who clearly has some significant moral failings, let's say, he understands this
right.
much more clearly than the vast majority of other world leaders.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, and it's interesting because so many Jews. We were talking about this yesterday, but so many Jews came, had an awakening after October 7th and are now feeling, very committed to their Jewish identity or to the cause for Israel or whatever it is. But if you don't have that coupled with a deep knowledge and understanding of our history, it gets really exhausting to deal with sort of the rhetoric around what's going on there. And it could feel like, oh my God, am I stepping into something that is just too much for me and it's too difficult and I have too many feelings and I'm unsure about this. But when you understand our history and you understand world history in general, and you understand anti-Semitism, it's easier. It's so much easier to just ignore the loud banging voices that are actually irrelevant and don't matter, And so it's all about educating ourselves and just knowing.
Yep. And I'll say this to those people also, like get a spine.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
like
true.
So people you're in a WhatsApp group with are saying that, you're wrong or that it's genocide or whatever, and they're making you feel bad. Who cares? Leave the WhatsApp group. I mean, who cares? Who cares what they think? And if you're letting yourself be convinced by other influences that have lost their moral bearing, that's on you. I mean, that's a you problem. That's not their problem. That's your problem.
It helps that you don't care about having friends. Most people care about having friends. I'm just kidding. You have friends.
It is convenient sometimes.
But
no,
but you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, we need to have a spine. And look, the Jews could have rolled over in 1945 and they didn't. We have to learn from them. They didn't roll over.
Totally. I have no patience for people who are being convinced that Israel is creating some situation or committing some atrocities because of the situation's uncomfortable for them. Right. And I was like, because it's inconvenience. Like they don't want to hear about it anymore. So it's easier to just say, can we just end this? Because this is like uncomfortable for me.
Hard. Yeah.
And it's like really making me sad that my friends are making me feel bad. So can we have Israel stop this? It's
I know.
It's
frustrating.
I really have no patience for those people. None.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, guys.
Yeah.
Don't tell him if you are feeling that way, because he will cut you out. He will delete you from his WhatsApp.
You'll be deleted instantly from my WhatsApp.
You'll be deleted. But listen, I think this was really interesting. And what I like about this topic is it's really something I didn't know anything about, even though I've read so much about the Holocaust and I thought I knew a lot, but then, you mentioned things that I've never heard of. So I'm happy to learn something new. And
you do that too for me. So,
I'm sure.
It goes both ways.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, but thank you for doing the hard work and reading.
So I will end the episode with this. Don't trust anything I said. And if you go out and make a fool of yourself at a party and someone proves you wrong, that is, once again, that is a you problem, not a me problem.
Unlike everything I said, which was 100% correct.
Totally.
And factual.
Totally. Absolutely. Yes. You can, anything ChayaLeah says, you can take to the bank. Anything I say is suspects.
Anyway, thank you so much.
All right. So if you guys like this kind of episode, which is ChayaLeah and I, is this the first episode we've done with just the two of us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
So
I know.
So you guys like it? You can let us know, send us an email. We haven't done a promotions for email in a while.
I know. We should, because my dad always asks, does anyone have any questions? So we should, if anybody wants my dad to talk about anything or want us to talk about anything, you should let us know. We're happy to accommodate you.
Send us an email. You can send us an email at oh my God. I was about to say Ask a Jew.
Yes.
edJEWcation edJEWcationpod@gmail.com. Yeah. Should we, and the other thing that people always do on podcasts is they ask people to rate them. Does that matter?
Oh, I think so. Why not? Rate us.
All right.
But only
rate
if it's
us.
5-star. I don't want you. Don't rate us if it's not 5-star.
I want 1 stars.
No.
I'm going against. I'm going against the grain. God. I'm a rebel. I'm a rebel.
No.
I want 1 stars. There's got to be like a negative.
He's wrong. 5 stars on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Does Spotify have rating? Definitely on Apple Podcast. Sure. It helps us. Yeah.
I think everyone probably has ratings now, don't they?
And also just send us love, send us nice. We love good comments and telling how smart we are. Why not?
Yes.
We need the boost. We need the confidence boost.
Yeah, for sure. That's without a doubt.
And same with my dad, by the way. He needs to hear good feedback because he appreciates it too. So if you enjoy the episodes with my dad, please let us know and we will let him know.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks, everybody. We'll be back with a new episode with probably 3 of us soon.
Yes.
All right. Bye.